With Batman Returns, the studio decided to give Tim Burton more creative control, which resulted in a Christmas-themed dark fantasy. They may have ended up regretting that decision. We're talking all about it this week in Kaden's Movie Club. Spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen it, beat it. I mentioned last week that Batman Returns feels more Tim Burton-y than his first Batman movie, and there's a reason for that. 1989's Batman was a big box office hit, so of course Warner Brothers wanted a sequel. But Tim Burton was hesitant to return as director. This was largely because he felt that he was creatively limited on the first movie. The studio involved themselves a lot and controlled much of the outcome. So if he was going to do it a second time, Burton requested that he have more creative control. Luckily, Warner Brothers was on board with that, not just because the first movie was successful, but because they actually thought it would be cool and original to have a weirder, more unique movie this time around. They would later come to have a different perspective, but we'll come back to that. When Burton agreed to return, the studio had already been developing the story for the sequel on their own, planning to have the Penguin and the Riddler as the main villains. The original screenwriter, Sam Hamm, had wanted the sequel to depict Harvey Dent's transition into Two-Face, with Billy D. Williams returning in the role from the first movie.
People of Gotham City, I'm a man of few words, but those words will count, and so will my actions.
But Warner Brothers was really pushing for the Penguin because their research had shown that he was the most recognizable Batman villain after the Joker. They did, however, let Burton replace the Riddler with Catwoman, who Burton and Hamm both thought would be more interesting. Despite the studio's insistence on the Penguin, Burton initially thought he was a really boring villain compared to the likes of Joker or Catwoman. And if you look at the comic book inspiration for the Penguin, it's entirely different from what ended up being in the movie. In the comics, the Penguin, or Oswald Cobblepot, is essentially just a gangster. The whole penguin thing is just a theme, but for Burton, the character was more interesting if they made him more of a literal penguin. So we get a drastically different portrayal than any other version of Penguin in Batman media. For reasons that are not really clear, Oswald is born with deformities that are kind of like a bird. To his parents, he's a monster, so what do? What any reasonable parent would do. They drop him in the Gotham River. He ends up in the sewer systems where he is rescued and raised by the penguins that live down there, as penguins do. So we have this new backstory given to the Penguin that kind of mirrors Batman. Both of them come from rich families, and both are separated from their parents, but for completely different reasons. They both end up as outcasts and freaks, but one of them uses that for good, and one uses it for evil.
You're just jealous because I'm a genuine freak, and you have to wear a mask!
You might be right.
The other piece to the puzzle, then, is our third main character, Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman.
Meow.
She's presented as the middle ground, a morally gray character that isn't on Penguin or Batman's side. She's on her own side. And this has become a staple for the Catwoman character ever since, where she's a bit of a wild card, both fascinating and frustrating various iterations of Batman.
You gotta be kidding me.
No guns, no killing.
Where's the fun in that?
I'm gonna find him, and I'm gonna make him pay. You gonna help me?
Help you?
Yeah. I thought you were vengeance.
Along with the rest of the movie, the tone for Catwoman feels pretty campy today, but at the time, this was a fairly progressive portrayal of a strong female character, especially for a movie like Batman, where she could have simply served as the romantic counterpart to Batman. Selina starts as a mistreated secretary and ends up as a strong, independent character that does things on her own terms.
Which is a very, novel approach, I'd say.
And who would you say this to?
Nobody?
I don't know about you, Miss Kitty, but I feel so much yummier. I just love a big, strong man who's not afraid to show it with someone half his size. Be gentle, it's my first time.
She became this way thanks to being resurrected and maybe being given powers by cats, but that's neither here nor there. Now, as you might have noticed, we've spent quite a bit of time discussing the two villains of the movie, and that's because they're our main characters this time around. Burton and the various screenwriters were obviously so much more interested in these new characters than they were in revisiting Batman. In a kind of reversal, it's Oswald and Selina that have goals, dreams, and ambitions, and Batman is simply there to oppose them. He's the villain in their story. And even in the earliest stages of the script by Hamm, the story was always set during Christmas time. A reason for this was never given, and the movie was released in June. It could have been something as simple as the Penguin being requested for the main villain, and then giving the whole thing a wintry vibe. Which you'd think you'd want to save for Mr. Freeze, but oh well. The thing that's funny is that Burton eventually brought on a new writer and discarded a lot of what Ham had come up with, but this element of the Christmas time setting always stayed. At the time it was being written, Burton was also working on Edward Scissorhands and The Nightmare Before Christmas, which both have that shared element. For whatever reason, Burton loves to mix in the themes of Christmas in stories that are partly dark, weird, and strange. But there's also a kind of sweet innocence about them, and that blend is something that Burton fans really connect with. As surprising as it might sound, one thing that Warner Brothers didn't expect with the first Batman movie was just how much money they would make through merchandising. The box office money was nice, but when combined with around $500 million of merchandise money, well, that's really what helped motivate the making of the sequel. So of course, merchandising was going to be an even bigger aspect of Batman Returns. The studio partnered with 7 different major corporations for various promotions, and one of the biggest partners was McDonald's, which changed 9,000 different McDonald's locations to be Gotham City themed. There were collectible cups and toys, and a lot of it was paired with the Happy Meal, so this was obviously targeted at kids, which seemed like a no-brainer for the marketing team. Who else was going to buy Batman backpacks and bedsheets and action figures if not kids? The problem was that this didn't exactly mesh with the weirder, darker tone of the actual movie that Warner Brothers had allowed Burton to do.
Some parents contend that Batman Returns, which is rated PG-13, is actually being marketed for younger children, and the movie is just too violent. Let's get an expert opinion on that from USA Today's junior movie critic, 10-year-old Danny Slasky.
Many parents found Catwoman's sexuality and Penguin's grotesque nature and the general tone of the movie to be inappropriate for kids, despite the fact that it had specifically been marketed at kids.
So, Danny, what did you think of the movie?
It was very violent. It was a total attack against kids, the whole movie.
Has caused McDonald's to do a Happy Meal promotion, and you know, who's buying Happy Meals?
McDonald's would even recall their Happy Meal tie-in. Warner Brothers was convinced that this public pushback was the reason that Batman Returns made $150 million less than the first movie. It was still financially successful, but the pushback would directly impact what happened to the Batman franchise. When meetings for the next Batman movie began and Tim Burton started pitching to Warner Brothers, they started telling him, "Oh, that's really cool. Hey, are you sure you don't want to take a little break? Go make one of your artsy movies?" And that's when he realized they didn't want him to do the next movie. So they parted ways, and Joel Schumacher was brought in for Batman Forever. This and Batman and Robin would become even sillier, almost entirely dedicated to selling merchandise.
Can I persuade you to take a sandwich with you, sir?
I'll get drive-through. Introducing McDonald's Superhero Burger.
Welcome to McDonald's.
And the key to do that was not offending any parents. But the good news is the studio figured that out later on, so we'll always have Batman Returns. This movie will always exist as a bizarre blend of Batman and Burton, and for now remains the only Batman movie that you can watch as a holiday movie. And I hope that over the course of this month you've received at least one new recommendation for a movie to watch during the holidays that you might not have considered for your yearly rotation. We first saw a blend of comedy horror with Krampus, where we considered how nostalgia can sometimes be our worst enemy. We then looked at Die Hard, the movie that practically started the "is it a Christmas movie" debate. Here in Kaden's Movie Club, we said yes, thanks to consistent holiday theming. But at the end of the day, if you're in the mood for a great hero-villain duo in McClane and Gruber and classic 80s action during your holidays, this is the movie for you. We then discussed The Holdovers, which was easily the most Christmassy movie in our lineup, but was well worth the consideration since it's so new. If it hasn't already entered most people's list of yearly holiday movies, I bet it'll only take a few years before it's considered a universal classic. And lastly, we submitted yet another Burton Christmas fantasy if you wanted a little more Gotham City in your dark Christmas. This is the movie for you. But whatever movies you choose to watch around the holidays, I truly hope your holidays are joyful. I hope you spend them with loved ones and that you take the time to do activities you enjoy, especially if it's convincing people to watch a few unconventional holiday movies with you. And with that, we conclude our December Movie Club. I'll be announcing the movie lineup and theme for January tomorrow, so stay tuned. And if you want to stay in the know about Movie Club, you know where to go.